So let's first do these 2.28. Okay, 2.28. Okay, this one. So it's 28. Lab symbols, simple statisticals. Okay. So the Zai book actually provide a framework for the Java code, but not much of the code. It's just to actually provide the class and also the main method, and declare the scanner and the 4 import values. Okay, but the rest of the code you need to actually fill in. So here let's take a look at the problem first. Okay, so the problem divided into 2 parts. Part 1, given 4 integers, output their product and their average. Okay, using integer arithmeticals. Okay, that's part 1. So when you actually look at the lab work, just pay attention to the examples they provide. So the example basically tells you how you're going to work on these problems. So let's say given 4 integers. So in the example, the 4 integers going to be imported as, 4 numbers separated by space. So these are 4 integers, 8, 10, 5, 4. That's the import. And the output going to be like this, 2 numbers. Now, if you look at the problem itself, you will find out the first number is the product. Okay, so it's a multiplication of these 4 numbers. So it's 8 times 10 times 5 times 4. So that's 1600. Now, the second number is their average. Okay, so how are you going to calculate the average? So the average is going to be something like this, right? You just add all these numbers together. 8 plus 10 plus 5 plus 4, and then divided by what number? Divided by 4, right? That's supposed to be the average. Now here's the things, the Zybook want you to actually exercise, you want to practice, the work. So in math, if you actually do the average, okay, so what is the average? Okay, so you're going to add them together, divided by 4, and then if you do the division, the result could be a fractional number. It could be a floating point number. So, however, in Java, you should realize that if the input numbers are integers, 8, 10, 5, 4, so you add them together, and the result is still integer. Okay. The result is still an integer. And if it's an integer, so an integer divided by another integer, which is 4, then the result will turn out to be an integer again. Now, this is actually kind of tricky, because if the result is a fraction number, like a 6 point something, I don't know, I just made up that number, okay, it's not really the number, then the Java can actually convert the number into integer. So when the Java convert the integer, they can actually remove all the digitals after the floating point. So the Java going to keep the whole number, the integer part. So this is what the Java going to do. So if you divide 2 integers, the result is going to be integer. Okay. So it's not really accurate result, but it's the closest result. Okay. Close to the integer result. So this is the first one. So that the problem says, note, integer division discards the fraction. Hence, the average of this 8, 10, 5, 4 is output as 6, not 6.75. So it looks like a 6.75 is the actual average number. But in Java, if you output as an integer, then they're going to get rid of the .75. Okay. That's part 1. Part 2, also import the product average using floating point arithmetic. Okay, output each floating point value with 3 digits after the decimal point, which can be achieved, okay, as follows. So now you're going to repeat the same problem, but this time you're going to do the floating point number. Okay. So let's do this. Okay. So for every Java problem, when you do the lab, you need to realize there are 3 parts. There are 3 parts. Input, okay, the input part, okay, and the computing part, output. So let's deal with each individually. So since the code already provides you the scanner object, it's already declared a scanner object, so you can just use it. And also it declared 4 actually numbers, the input number. Okay, so all you need to do is import the number and assign these 4 numbers to num1, num2, and num3, num4. So let's see. So num1 equals, let's see, nr, that's the scanner object. Next, int. Okay. So this is going to actually import the first integer and assign to num1. Okay, so the import is going to be like this, separated by space. So you're going to actually repeat this import statement 4 times. I'm going to do the copy paste because I'm lazy. Okay, then you're going to change the number. First one is in num1, num2, num3, num4. That's the import part. You have successfully import the 4 numbers. Okay. Now the next one. So you're going to calculate the product and also the average. So first one, let's see. We're going to separate the part 1. So I'm going to say comment part 1. Okay. So the part 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first define a product. Okay. Product are going to be the multiplication of all these numbers. Have any problem? Any questions? And then the average. What is the average? So it's going to be num1, num2, num3, plus num4, and divided by 4, right? Okay. Then you want to print out as the first one is a product, second one is the average. Okay. What are you going to do? System dot out dot print ln. Okay, so I'm going to print the product. And then there's a space between these, so I'm going to use the concatenate, right? So I'm going to actually put the string, that's a space, is 1 space, and then I do the average. Not 1. Now, do I miss anything yet? Do I miss anything?
Is it the one? Is it the fact that to put another output?
You mean not the print ln, just print?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's fine because you already printed the product first, and then the first product and the space, and then the second one, and then you return and switch to next line. That should be okay, not a problem. But if you do this, that's fine. But just realize that after you print out the product and average, the cursor actually remains at the end of the average. So the cursor, once you print out, the cursor remains over here, okay, after the 6. Okay, that's the only difference. But LN is okay. Now the only thing is that if you compile, you will find out the product and average are not defined. They're not, they don't know what's the type, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to declare the integer product and the average. Work. Now, if you don't do that, if you compile, they're going to give you error message. So let's say import program, which is 8.10.5.4. That's exactly the same import as an example. Okay, let's do that. Click. $1,600 space 6. That's the one. That's the output expected. That's great. Now the part 2 is a little bit tricky. Are you still going to use these 4 numbers? However, you want to print out as a floating point value. Now the reason we want to use the floating point value is you're going to get a very accurate result. Because remember, for the integer, if you do the division, the result is not accurate because you're going to get rid of the fraction. So now to do this, you need to calculate the average and store this number in the floating point number, right? So let's say I'm going to say product. I'm not going to use the same identify because the product is already used. Okay, so I'm going to use product floating point. I'm going to say product F. Okay, but before I do this, I need to declare double, right? Product F and the average F. F basically means floating point. Okay. So when I do this, so if I want to get the floating point result, now the import value, these are all integer. So somehow I need to change the type. Okay. Now if I do this, what happens? Let's see. Okay, let's do this. And then I'm gonna actually use the, now for the floating point, I'm gonna use the a different output statement called system.out.printf. That's basically means print formatted printer. Okay. So print f is called formatted. For the formatted printer statement. Okay. So I can actually use the printf statement. Okay. I copy this over here. And so that's your value going to print it out as this format. So that format basically means a percentile. That's the syntax. And .3, that means I'm going to print out the 3 digits after decimal point. 3 digits after decimal point, just like this. I'm going to print the 3 digits after decimal point. Okay. So now this F means floating point. Okay. This F means floating point. So if I want to print product F, so I'm going to say product F, printed as using this format. But now I want to print two numbers, right? Product F and average F. So I'm going to actually put the average F. Okay. Okay. Could you please actually turn off, mute yourself? Because unless you have a, you want to ask a question. Okay. And then space. Then, so you want to actually define a format for two numbers. Okay. Product F and average. So then you use the same format. So I'm going to double copy it again. Excuse me, could you please turn to mute yourself?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can actually when you ask a question, you can actually unmute it. So the first one is the format for product F. The second one is the format for average F. Okay, so they both use the format of floating point with 3 digits after the decimal point. Okay. Now here's the output. Okay, and I put the space here. Now the question here is, can I just I know, oh, average F. Can I just use the same formula? So then because I declare product F as a floating point, average as a floating point. And then here I still use the integer. Okay. Now this is kind of tricky. Let's see what the result is. Okay. So the result is 1600.000. Okay, it's the same. That's fine. The second one is 6.000. Even though it's printed out as a floating point, but the value are the same as the integer. Remember, when you actually do the floating point, you want to actually get the accurate result. But this one is accurate, right? Because it's a product. You are not losing any digitals. But this one, the average, it's still not correct. Now, what's the point? What's the reason? So here it's okay. Okay, so you add all you multiply all these numbers, and then which is because every number is an integer, so the result is still integer. But when you assign an integer number 1600 to product F, which is double, then they're going to add .000. Okay, following the format. Now for average, that's a different story. So you add this integer. So number one, num1 plus num2 plus num3 plus num4. This is the result is an integer. Okay. So integer divided by 4, which is also integer. So then the final result is going to be an integer. So it's a 6.75, but the final result should be an integer. So it's going to be actually truncated to the 6. And assign the integer 6 to average F, which is a double, then you're going to actually add a 6.000. So it's not the accurate result. So how can I actually correct this? Remember in Java, so when you divide, if it's an integer divided by another integer, so the result is going to be an integer. If you have a floating point like a double divided by another double number, then result is going to be double, right? So in order to actually make the correct answer, so it's an accurate answer, somehow you have to change these type from integer to double and change this to double. And now it's relatively easy to change this to 4.0, right? Now, what's this side? How can I change the integer to a double?
You can cast it if you put in parentheses double in front of it.
Parentheses double over here. So this forces the none one to be a double, and you can do the same thing. And to make it consistent, even though the multiplication does not lose anything, but I still want to do the double, cast it to double. So then all these double multiply and generate result as a double, and then assign double to the product f, which is also double. So to make it consistent, it's always a good practice to, explicitly convert integer to a double. Okay, even though if you don't put the double, the result is still correct for product, right? But it's always good to do this, and then you just run it. Okay. Now you get a double. All the double number added together, it's a double. Divided by 4.0, it's a double. Now you can see the result, which is 6.750. Okay. Now that's the output. Okay. So the key is the printer F. Okay. So that's formatted printing. We haven't actually talked about this in detail, but in the example they provide this format, so you can just use it. Okay. Now we're going to talk about this later. Okay. Well, that's a Xylab 2.28. So do you have any questions, or what is next problem?
Wait, actually, looking back. Oh wait, never mind. I was going to say something about the decimals, but it looks correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, or then do you have any problem of your own, so you want us to solve together, or I can pick the next one? I can randomly pick the next one. So we're going to jump to let's see, what's the next one? So we solved this problem. Let's actually pick up the last one. Okay. 4.18. I think chapter 3 mostly talk about the branch, the if statement, if else statement. And chapter 4 we talk about a loop. It's either while loop or for loop. Okay. Let's take a look at 4.18. So to see how we can solve that problem. Okay. Let's go ahead. Let's look at the chapter 4. 4.18. Okay. So output range with increment of 5. Okay. So again, write a program whose input is two integers, and whose output is the first integer and subsequent increments of 5. Okay, subsequent increment of 5. So if the first integer, like in this case, the first integer is -15, the second integer is 10. These are two integers, and the output is the first integer. Okay, it's the first integer, and the subsequent integers of 5. So subsequent is actually always increment by 5. So -15, that's the first one, and then -15 plus 5, -10, and then -10 plus 5, that's -5, and then -5 plus 5, that's 0, and then you could just keep actually adding 5 until the output is, here's the condition. So if you want to print the output in some kind of sequence, you should have some kind of a stop criteria, right? Because otherwise the Java going to keep actually printing the numbers. So here's the condition. As long as the value is less than or equal to the second integer. Okay, so you can actually keep incrementing numbers, minus 15, minus 10, minus 5, minus 0, as far as the number is less than or equal to second integer, which is 10. So that means minus 5 is less than 10, minus 0 is less than 10, minus 5 is less than 10, and 10 is equal to 10. So that included equal, right? And then the next one is 15, okay? Because 10 plus 15 is the increment of 5. 15 compared with 10 is greater than 10. So then the condition is no longer true, right? So that's the stop criteria. So you have two integers and then the output. Now, the other example, in this case, you basically assume the first integer is always smaller than the second integer. So then you can increment by 5 and the increment by 5, and which is still smaller than the second integer, but until you reach the second integer, equal or greater than second integer. But if in your import, your first integer is already greater than the second integer, then this program cannot continue, right? Because you're supposed to output this one and add 5 and compare with second one, and it's already greater than second one. So you're not supposed to actually print out any numbers here. So that's why if the first integer is greater than the second integer, you should print out the output. Okay, says second integer can't be less than the first, because otherwise this increment won't actually last. Okay, so this is actually the lab problem. So the first one, you're going to import two values. As I mentioned, that it's always import, computing, output. 3 steps. Look at the import. So the import is 2 values. The output is this, and the computing part is you got the import. You compare the first integer with the second integer. Okay. As far as less than or equal to the second one, you print it out. Okay. So here's what we're supposed to do. And so it already provides you the framework. So you have a class called a lab program, and you have a main program. Okay, main method. So the first part is the import. The import is going to be 2 numbers. So you're going to use the scanner again. Say declare a scanner. I use, instead of CINR, SCNR, I use my scan. Okay, I call it my scan. I like this. And then you can use whatever the name you want to use. Okay, so then it's a sys.in, the import string. And then you're going to import 2 numbers. Okay, so you're going to declare these 2 numbers int a first num and second num. Now what's next? You want to actually import this value, right? So the first num was my scan dot next int. So this is going to import the first value, which is minus 15. And then I'm going to import the second value. Again, I use the copy paste and replace the okay. So I got to import. So what's next? I think it's easier to check the second condition, right? If the second integer is less than the first, as in this case, then you should print this one out. So it's always easier. How to check this one? You're going to use the if condition, right? If the second num is greater than the first. Second one greater than first one is okay. If it's less than the first noun, what do? You're gonna print out the second integer is less than the first integer, which is in that case, you're gonna print out this statement, right? I'm gonna print out that string. Colon. Does that make sense? So if this is true, then do this. Else, so that means so I put the comment say that means the second one is greater than or equal to first one. That's okay, right? That's what we want. Now what are you gonna do? So then you're gonna first print out the output. The output is the first integer. Okay. So I'm gonna put the output. I want to indent this.
You spelled that wrong.
Okay, which says, oh, first now. Okay. Okay, so I gotta print the first integer first, and then don't forget the space between two integers. So normally I put the space at the end of the first out, right? So that's always easier. You put the space here. So that means, and also make sure you don't use the print ln because you don't want to actually switch to the next line because the next number going to be after the first number. Okay, so you need to print and put the space here. So next one going to be, after you print the first one and space, and your cursor is actually here. Okay, your cursor is here right before the -10. Okay. Now what's next? So you increment the number, the first number by 5, right? Now, this is actually tricky because now you increment the number by 5. Oh, sorry. It's a first num. And then what's next? You still need to check if the first noun is less than or equal to the second noun, right? As far as this is true, you continue to increment. So then what is the best approach for this? Looks like you need a loop, right? So you check the condition. If it's true, then print it out and then increment the value and then go back and check the condition again. Okay, so while loop, looks like a while loop is the best approach for this kind of problem. So while loop basically going to do is you check the first noun with the second one. If the first noun is less than or equal to the second one. Okay, if the first noun is less than or equal to the second num. So then, what do? You print out, right? Continue to print out this. Remember, this is first noun. This first noun is not the same as this first noun because you actually increment by 5 already. So this first noun is actually 5 bigger than this, the first actual one. And after this, in the while loop, in the body, what are you going to do? So you print out the first noun. What's the next step? You increment the first noun again, right? By 5. Okay, so the number first noun has been incremented again by 5. And then what's the next step? You're going to check with this. Okay. So basically, that's it. That's the while loop. Then close the else. Make sure you always pair the brace. Okay. So this one pair with this one, and this one pair with this one. Make sure it's always appears as a pair. Okay, don't miss anything. So looks like now if the second one is less than first one, then print out the second integer can't be less than the first one. Now else, that means if that's not true, that the second one is greater than or equal to the first one, then you print out the first number based on this instruction, and then increment by 5. Okay, then every time when you increment by 5, you check this condition. Make sure first num is always less than or equal to the second num, and then if that's true, then you print it out. And then after you printed the number out, increment by 5, increment the value, and check the condition again. Increment the value, check the condition again. If the condition is true, you always print. Make sense? Let's check. Okay, so the first one we want to do is 1510, right? 1510. So you always actually check this one because in this lab they already provide you the output. You can actually test your code to make sure your code works correctly. So how can you say it's correct? Because if I test it, I get the same result. Okay, let's do this. Run program. Huh. That's okay. Where's the problem? Oh, this here.
Line 19. Oh.
That's here, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I just misspelling. Okay, run the program. That's always happens. Okay, don't be panic. If you actually got compiler error, don't panic because that happens. So the output is minus 5, minus 10, minus 5, oh, minus 15, minus 10, minus 5, minus 0, 5, 10. Yeah, that's correct. Now you can test again, 20 and the 5. Make sure that this is printed out. Okay. Oh, 20 and 5. Okay, second integer can't be less than the first one. So that's 1. Okay, so this is actually the code we just added. So we actually added a code from here to here. Okay. Any questions?
Okay. So I've done exactly that. It didn't work.
Okay. So if that's the case, let's talk about during my office hour. If it's an individual question, if you have any questions, like if you want me to, for that kind of problem, how can we solve this? That's okay. But if you have a compiler error, let's talk about this right after the class in my office hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be available.
Yeah. Because I want you to ask any question which is general to everyone, not a specific compiler error. Because if you have a compiler error, most likely it's going to be something like a misspelling, and you actually forgot to close the actually the block. Like if you have
Or if you accidentally capitalize something, a variable.
Okay.
Could be that.
Yeah. Because most of the language like Java, they are case sensitive. If you misspell it, or if you actually the capital character becomes the lowercase, then the Java cannot recognize them. So that's typically a problem. So you have any questions about this before we move forward? So this problem basically gave you the branch if statement to check the second condition, okay, and also using the loop, the while loop, to check whether the condition is still true. If it's still true, then print the result out and increment by 5. And if after the increment the value is still less than or equal to the second one, then continue to print and continue to do the work. Okay.
Could we go over 3.25?
That 25. Which chapter? It's
3.
325. Okay, let's do that. Okay, 25 name format. Okay. Okay. So many documents use the specific. Let me see. Use the specific. Let's see what the problem is. So use specific format for the person's name. Write the program whose import is. Okay, here's the import. You have import. You import three string, right? You import 3 string. Okay, so let's see. Then import 3 string. Okay, let's see. So, and whose output is last name, first initial, dot, middle initial. Okay, so that here's the example. You have a Pat, Sally, Doe. So then the last name is always first, then the first initial, middle initial. Okay, that's fair enough. So okay, if there's no middle initial, then if the importer has a format no middle initial, no middle name, then they just actually point out the last name and the first initial. Okay, so again, the first one you're gonna do is import, right? Then scanner, always put the scanner. So say my scan. So new at okay scan. See. Now, so you're gonna import 3 numbers. So I think I can use this. Yeah, I can use this. I can use this 3. I can say 3 string. Last name. Okay, and then the first name and middle name. then you're going to use this. So how can I import these string using scanner? So I'm going to say my scan dot next, right? That people use next. Okay. And the last name. This is what you're going to do. Could you mute yourself again? Last name, first name, middle name. Let's check the order. So the import is going to be first name, middle name, last name. Oh, I'm sorry. First name, middle name. Let me see. First name, middle name, last name. Okay. So I'm going to put the last name last. Okay. So because when you actually using the scan to read, the first one assigned to the first name, the second one assigned to the middle name, last one assigned to the last name, because that's what they want. Okay. Now, this problem is about the output format. Okay. So so the output can be DOE. Okay. So you're gonna actually say system dot. Okay. The other thing I can do is I can put dot out. Okay. So what I can do is I can print. So what I'm gonna do? Dot print. So if that's the case, let's see. Okay, so I can do the first initial, and let's see. So because I want to print to the first initial, so I need to do declare some more. Let's say first initial. I'm gonna use first init. Okay, the middle init. I'm gonna use the first in middle init. So the print out gonna be so if the so you need to check how many imports you actually have, right? So this problem is not actually very so what I'm gonna do is I can use the let's see what. Okay, let me do this. you can actually use the, instead of use the next, you can actually import the whole line. Import the whole line. Why I want to do this? Okay, so then I'm going to declare an import string. I called import string. Why I want to do this? Because now the tricky part is the import could be 3 actually words or 2, right? Or 2. So the import could be like this. Okay. So some people has no middle name. Yeah, import could be like this. So it could be first, middle, last, or could be first, last. There's no middle name. So that's the reason why I need to figure out, okay, let's take the first, or the import string. Okay. So then I'm going to say import string. By scan, next one. So I'm going to actually import all the value at once. Okay. The next one you need to do is, because if you import as 2 or as 3, then you need to actually find out how many space do you have, right? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually find out the space. So let's see. So I'm going to do is that the import string, okay, dot index of. So you want to find the index of a particular string. Now in this case is a space. Okay, you want to find a particular string. So what I want to do is, okay, so let's say, so let's define 2 additional string, maybe an integer. Integer, it's an index. I'm going to say first index. Index. Okay. So then I'm going to assign this to first index. Okay. So in the import string, I got an import string, and I check this particular substring, which is a space. What is the index of this subspace? So basically it shows what's the index of this one. Okay, the first one. So in this particular case, the index P is 0, 1, 2, 3. So the first index should return 3. Okay, so that's the first one. Okay, now, and then the second index. Okay, so basically here you're going to use a lot of actually operation related to the index of a string. So you're going to say import string. Okay, and then the index of, you're going to use index of. Let's see, or particularly, I'm going to use a single, because we're talking about a character, only one character. That character is a space. Okay, so index after the first index plus 1. So when you actually find out the first index, now since the import is either actually 3 words or 2 words, so you can have at least one space, right? So the first space is always valid space. The second one may not, because so you're going to say import string dot index of. So again, you find the index of the space right after the first index. So the first index, you basically start from here. And if there's any actual space, then find the index of the second space. Okay. So then you can find out what is your first name in that string. Okay. First name is from the import string. Okay. From import string, but you want to find a substring. Okay. From 0 to the first index. So let me actually take it that way. So suppose the import string is this. Let me actually put this. So let's say, assume this. Let's assume this. Okay. The import string will be this. Okay, so the import string actually get this. Suppose I put the import like this. So then, what is the first index? From the import string, and find the index of this particular character. Okay, so what is the first index? Does everybody know what's the first index?
3.
0, 1, 2, 3, right? So if you actually put say index of say S, capital S, then you're gonna check 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's 4, but the space is actually 3. Okay. Now, if you actually talk about index L, now you have 2L, but then the first L, the index of first L will be returned. Okay. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it will be 6. So now we only actually look for the index of space. The first index is going to be 3. And the second index, okay, I put the semicolon. So the second index is going to be, what is the second index? The second index actually is of a space. Now it starts from the first index, which is 3 plus 1. So you start from 4, right? So let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Start from 4, and you start from this 4. And what's the next index? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's going to be 9. Okay. Any questions on this? And then you will get to your first name. What's your first name? It's Pat. So the first name should be from the import string, and it's a substring. Okay, it's a function called substring. The substring start from index 0, end with the first index, which is 3. Okay, so that's the substring. So 0, 1, 2. But from 0 to index 3, but this substring gonna exclude the 3 itself. It should be from 0 to 3 minus 1, which is 2. From 0 to 2. So that's 0, 1, 2. That's Pat. Okay. Okay. Now, what's the first initial? What's the first initial? Again, right, import string, substring, first initial is from 0 to first initial is just this one, right? P, right? So that what's the end index? Should be 1, right? Does it make sense? Because when you do the substring, you actually output the substring from 0 to first index. If the first index is 3, then you basically substring is from 0 to 2. Now, if you only want to actually, get to only one character, so then the first character, and then end with 1, but the last index should be 1 minus 1. 1 minus 1, that should be 0. So it's only 1. It's actually only 0. Okay. Now, if you bought 2, then you will see PA. Okay, because it should be actually index 0 and 1, not exclude the 2, but index from 0 to 1. That's only the first. It's a string, but it only contains one character. Okay. Make sense for this? Now, what about this? If the import string contains only 2 words, the first name and the last name, no middle name. So there's only 1 space, right? So what's the second index? Second index. Okay. So if there's no, this is something that the index of function going to return. If you try to actually find the index of a string or of a character, and if this character is not found, then it will return -1. You can check these. You can check the corresponding topic in the string operation. So let's actually talk about this. I'm gonna first actually give you the just to finish the code. Then we can talk about each of the function. If the second index equals -1, second equals -1, then so that means there's only 1 space, right? Because there's no second space. Okay, so the second actually, I'm not going to say first index, second index. This is actually confusing. I should say first space index, right? First space. But anyway, you understand what I mean. So it's a first space index. So I should say first space index. Second space index. Second space index. Okay. You just try to make the name descriptive. So it's first space index. First space. Oh, that's first init. That's okay. So if the second space index is -1, that means there's no second space. And what does that mean? If there's no second space, therefore no middle name, right? Please interrupt me if you have any question on this. So in that case, what are you gonna print out?
Professor, I think that comment is going to throw an error. You used the wrong slashes.
Which one? The line number?
Line 19.
Line.
Those are backslashes, not forward slashes.
Oh. Okay, thank you. So that comment basically, if space a second space index is -1, that means there's no second space. So that means there's only 2 import value. Okay, so if a 2 import value, then the first one is the first name. First one is always the first name. The second one could be a middle name, could be a last name. But if there's only 1 space, then the second one is the last name. So then you're gonna print out this format. Okay, so let's say if that's the case, and I'm gonna say middle name, middle init, okay, equals what am I gonna say? So you're gonna print out the so the middle init is nothing. There's no middle name, so the middle init is empty. So then I'm gonna print out the last name. What is the last name? Last name gonna be a string, the import string. Import string dot. So the import string is this. So the last name gonna be the second one, because this is actually import string. There are 2 actually a space, right? But we're talking about if there's 1 space. So then if there's 1 space, then it's just a pat and space silly, and there's no dough. So then the last name gonna be the second one, and so the last name gonna be a substring. Okay. First space index, right? First space index, actually +1. You have to actually import +1, and then the last one is all the way to the end of the string. So how can I actually say it's the end of the string? That's the length of the string. Okay. I don't know why it's oh, I should actually have this. It's interesting that if you don't put the first brace, then it will give you the so that means if the second space index is not -1, that means it is okay. So that means there are a legitimate number. So that again, so there is a second. Therefore, there is middle name. Okay. So let's see if there's a middle name. So then you're gonna find out. So the middle init. Let me actually copy paste. I'm lazy. So what's the middle? Middle init gonna be import string dot substring, right? Middle init is a substring. and the first space index plus 1. So it's first space index plus 1. So that's this. Okay, the index of this. Now it should end actually here because you are not going to print more. So what are you going to do? You just add one more. Okay, because you start from here, add one more so that you only print one character. Okay, that's the middle init. And then you're also going to actually print out the, oh, you already have a first init, you have a middle init, and then you have a last name. Okay, you're complete. Okay. So then, what's next? Okay. So you're going to print out these things. So the system print out, okay. So it's going to be print line. Let me actually finish this. I'm going to continue. So you're going to actually print a line. What is it you're going to print? Last name. So that's the first one. Space plus comma space double quote plus first init okay, first init plus dot, right? Now this is kind of tricky. So you're gonna actually not, I think I just used the printer. So I'm gonna print at this point. Okay. Now if the middle init is okay, let's say if middle init is not empty, okay, I'm gonna continue, right? Does that make sense? I'm gonna continue. So then the middle init. And then plus dot. Now if the middle init is not empty, then you print a middle init. You also add a middle init after this. And if the middle init is empty string, then you just do nothing. Okay. Let's pray. Okay. Let me actually import the value. Let's see, pat. First test this case. Or let's first test. Oh yeah, test the three cases. Okay. Run. Okay. Reach the end of. Oh, okay. Don't panic because I forgot to close the if statement. Okay. Run it. Huh. Is this the right one? I don't think that's. Oh, sorry. That's not right because the last name is different. So if the middle init is not 0, I have to, okay, you see what I mean? That's not right. Let's see. Okay. So if this, yes, else. So if it's 0, then I just only print the first init. I cannot combine these two. I thought I can just save some space. I use a print line. You can use a print line for each. Because otherwise, the last thing is going to be printed twice. Okay, let's see. So if the middle name is not empty, that means it's a three name sequence. If the middle name, what's going on? You see what's the problem here? Middle name. Okay, so you're gonna do this. Middle initial, last name. Oh, so if the middle initial, so that's the case. If there's a 3, then I'm gonna say it's a second. Last name is a second space index. Okay. Okay, the second space index, not the first. Okay, let's see. Hopefully it's working. Because if there are two space, here we go. If there's two space, the last name should be after the second space index. Okay, and then if there's two names, then there's actually only one space. Then the last name is after the first space index. Okay, here we go. That's okay. So that's a 3 name. Let's test the 2 name. Okay, if there's 2 name. Yeah, Clark Julia. Yeah, this problem is actually kind of a little bit tricky. So you need to actually manipulate the import string and the substring. The key for this point is, it's kind of tricky because you have, sometimes people import 3 names, the last name, middle, and the first, middle, and last, and then the first and the last. There's no middle name. So in that case, you need to actually, judge whether there are 2 in space. So to do this, you're gonna create a index number for 2 different space. Now the first space index is always a valid number. The second one may not be a valid number, because if it's 2 words, the second space index is going to be -1 because it's not going to return any valid number. So that's the key point. So that's basically what the code is going to look like. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, this one was pretty tricky.
This is actually, yeah, it's pretty tricky because
I had to do the most like I don't know what you call it, editing on this one. I had to go through the most revisions on this one.
Yeah, when I first looked at the problem, I thought, oh, you need to actually import using the scanner, like a next, using next. But the next actually, you're gonna import the first one, then import the second one after space, import the third one after space. But then I realized that because you don't know how many words the import is gonna have, right? So you have to manually check, how many space between these words. How many space between these words. So you have to import the
I just did a try except, like a try catch statement.
You try to catch the statement.
I did a try catch statement, and I just didn't have it.
Okay, there's another way. Yeah, you can try to catch. Make sure that yeah, that's the other one. Because if you only have 2 actual words, the last one gonna be invalid. But it will catch as, yeah, you can use that trick as well. But the try catch, is actually a topic we're going to talk about later. So yeah, if you know that, it's great. That's another trick you can use. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I think this is probably the trickiest one, because it actually requires you to familiar with all these, the manipulate all these index for the string and the substring. So that's pretty actually tricky. So okay, do you have any other questions? So since actually the class already passed, so if you want to leave, you can always leave. But if you want to, actually, I'm still going to be around, and the due date is actually midnight today. So you still have about a day to complete the work. But I'm still going to be around, so you can actually, if you want, you can log in, because my office hour is actually from 12:30 to 1:45. So if you want to jump in anytime, you can jump in.